Ambassador Taemin Park walked through the bright corridors of Nexus Station. His black shoes made soft sounds on the metal floor. Around him, aliens from dozens of worlds moved about their daily business. The tall, blue Vrexani, with their 4 arms, carried data tablets. The small, furry Keth scurried between the legs of larger species. The slug-like Morvani left wet trails as they slid along special paths built into the walls. 50 years ago, humans had joined this great community of spacefaring races. 50 years of peace. 50 years of working together. 50 years of humans proving they were not the monsters their home world had made them. But today felt different. Taemin had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years. He knew the sounds and smells of Nexus Station like his own home. He could tell when something was wrong just by how the air moved through the corridors. Today, conversations stopped when he walked by. Alien friends who used to greet him with warm gestures now looked away. He entered the great assembly hall. The dome overhead showed the stars outside the station. Hundreds of seats filled the curved walls, each one designed for different alien body types. At the center, High Arbiter Clethis stood at the speaking platform. The Vrexani was old, even by their long-lived standards. His blue skin had turned pale with age, and his 4 arms moved with careful precision. Today, we address an important matter, Clethis announced. His voice carried easily through the hall's sound system. The question of proper species roles within our coalition. Taemin took his seat in the human section. Around him, other human representatives settled into their chairs. Captain Sarah Kim from the Merchant Marine, Professor David Chen from the Science Division, Admiral Lisa Park from the Defense Council. All of them looked puzzled by the day's agenda. Clethis activated a hologram above the platform. It showed trade routes, colony worlds, and resource flows throughout Coalition space. Red dots marked human settlements and operations. Over the past decades, Clethis continued, certain species have expanded their influence beyond their original assignments. This has created imbalances in our carefully maintained system. The hologram zoomed in on human colonies, peaceful farming worlds, mining stations, research outposts, trading hubs where humans worked alongside dozens of alien races. We must remember that each species has natural strengths, Clethis said. The Keth excel at detailed technical work. The Morvani are gifted negotiators. The Vrexani provide wisdom through long experience. Taemin felt his chest tighten. He could see where this was going. Humans, Clethis paused, come from what we classify as a Class 12 deathworld. Their evolutionary background makes them naturally suited for specific roles. The hologram changed. Now it showed frontier worlds, dangerous, wild planets on the edge of Coalition space, places where the environment killed colonists regularly. We propose a recalibration of human assignments, Clethis announced, moving human populations to worlds where their unique survival skills can be best utilized. Around the hall, alien delegates nodded approval. The Keth chittered agreement. The Morvani made wet-slapping sounds with their tentacles, their version of applause. Taemin stood up. High Arbiter, may I speak? Of course, Ambassador Park. This proposal would remove humans from established colonies, from positions we've held for decades, from lives we've built alongside our coalition partners. Not remove, Clethis corrected. Relocate to places where your people's natural abilities are most needed. Our natural abilities? Tae-min kept his voice calm, diplomatic. High Arbiter, humans have contributed to coalition science, arts, trade, and diplomacy for 50 years. We've proven ourselves capable of far more than just surviving in dangerous places. Indeed, Clethis agreed. But capability and optimal assignment are different things. A Keth could learn to be a warrior, but their talents are better used in engineering. Similarly, while humans can perform many roles, they are naturally suited for frontier survival. Other human representatives started to speak up. Captain Kim stood. Our merchant vessels have carried coalition trade for decades without incident, and they can continue to do so, Clethis replied smoothly. On routes to frontier worlds where such robustness is required. Professor Chen raised his hand. The research facilities I oversee have made breakthrough discoveries. My team includes researchers from 12 different species. Your dedication is noted, Clethis said. But core world research requires different skills than your background provides. Admiral Park's face turned red. Are you suggesting humans can't be trusted with important positions? Not at all. Clethis spread his forearms wide. We're suggesting that trust is best demonstrated through appropriate assignment. The debate continued for hours, but Tae-min could count votes. The Vrexani controlled 12 seats, the Keth had 8, the Morvani had 6. Smaller species added their support. Humans had only 4 seats in the assembly. When the vote came, it was overwhelming. 327 in favor, 4 against. The motion passes, Clethis announced. Human populations will be relocated to frontier assignments within 1 standard year. Current human officials will be replaced by more suitable candidates within 60 days. Security forces, big armored Thak warriors, started moving toward the human section. Not threatening, just present. Tae-min looked at his fellow humans. Captain Kim's hands were shaking. Professor Chen looked like he might cry. Admiral, Park was calculating whether she could fight her way out. Ambassador Park, Clethis called out, if you would please accompany our security personnel. Your replacement briefings will begin immediately. 2 Thak guards stepped up beside Tae-min. Each one was twice his size, covered in natural armor plates, with arms like tree trunks. As they walked toward the exit, Tae-min pulled out his personal communication device. The guards didn't stop him. After all, what could one human message do? He typed in an old Korean phrase his grandmother had taught him, a saying from the old country, from times when Korea faced enemies who thought they were weak. Horangiga baltobel geoganda. The tiger remembers its claws. He sent the message to what looked like his family back on Earth. Just a grandson, staying in touch with relatives. The guards escorted him toward the detention area. As they walked, Tae-min spoke quietly to Clethis, who was following behind. High Arbiter, you've made a very serious mistake today. How so, Ambassador? You assume. Humans became civilized because we forgot how to be dangerous. Tae-min's voice stayed calm and polite. But we didn't forget. We just chose to be something else. And now that choice has been made for you, Clethis replied. No, Tae-min said as the guards pushed him through a doorway. Now that choice has been taken away. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. In the assembly hall, alien delegates began making plans for the great relocation. They discussed shipping schedules and colony assignments. They talked about finding new ambassadors and administrators. None of them noticed the small communication relay hidden in the human section of the hall. None of them detected the encrypted signal that bounced from the station's communication. array to a dozen different points throughout Coalition space. The message was simple. The tiger remembers its claws. Throughout the galaxy, humans working in alien facilities, serving on alien ships, living in alien cities, received the message. Most of them had been born in Coalition space. Most had never even seen Earth. But they all understood what it meant. The time for playing nice was over. Captain Hee-Jin Cho was checking cargo manifests when the message arrived. Her ship, Soul's Pride, was docked at Kepler Station in the Vega system. Around her, alien workers loaded containers of rare metals and agricultural products. The busy spaceport hummed with activity as ships from across the galaxy came and went. The message popped up on her personal device between shipping schedules and fuel reports. Just a few Korean characters from her cousin on Earth. Family staying in, touch. Nothing suspicious, but Hye-Jin knew better. She looked around the cargo bay. Her crew was scattered around the ship, doing normal maintenance work. To any observer, they looked like typical human merchants. Hard-working, reliable, boring. Hee-Jin walked to her private cabin and locked the door. She pulled up what looked like a family photo on her wall display. But when she pressed her palm to a specific spot, the image changed. Hidden compartments opened throughout her cabin. Soul's Pride wasn't really a merchant ship. Inside the hidden spaces were weapons that didn't appear on any coalition registry. Communication equipment that could slice through military encryption. Navigation systems that could plot courses through restricted space. And uniforms that showed Soul's Pride's real purpose. She was a deep-cover military vessel, one of hundreds, scattered throughout Coalition space. Hye-Jin opened her ship's communication system and sent coded messages to her crew. Within minutes, they began arriving at her cabin. Engineer Min-Ho Park looked confused. Pilot Soo-Jin Lee seemed nervous. Weapons Specialist Jae-Hyun Kim appeared excited. "Orders from home," Hye-Jin announced. "Operation Tiger's Claw is active." The crew's faces changed. 50 years of pretending to be peaceful merchants vanished in seconds. These weren't traders anymore. They were soldiers. "Finally," Jae-Hyun muttered. "Prep the ship for military configuration," Hye-Jin ordered. "Min-Ho, I want all hidden systems online within the hour." "Soo-Jin, plot escape routes from this station." "Jae-Hyun, start weapons checks." "What about the cargo?" Min-Ho asked. "Leave it. We have more important things to carry now." 3 systems away, Dr. Bo-Ram Kim was working late in her laboratory on Titan's Dream. The research facility was one of the Coalition's most important xenobiology centers. For 8 years, she had been studying alien plant and animal life. Her colleagues thought she was one of the most dedicated researchers they had ever met. They had no idea what she was really doing. When the message reached her, Bo-Ram was examining samples from a newly discovered world. Around her, alien scientists worked at similar stations. The Keth researchers used their tiny hands to handle delicate specimens. The Vrexani scientists used their 4 arms to run multiple tests at once. Bo-Ram read the message and smiled. Finally, she began moving through the laboratory, checking on various experiments. To her colleagues, she looked like she was doing routine quality control. In reality, she was implementing plans she had been preparing for years. At the first workstation, she adjusted the temperature controls on a bacterial culture that 3 worlds depended on for crop protection. The change was tiny. No one would notice for weeks. But eventually, the bacteria would die, and those worlds would lose their harvest. At the second station, she modified the genetic database that tracked diseases across Coalition space. Small changes in identification codes. Wrong treatments would be prescribed. Medical systems would fail in ways that seemed like random errors. At the third station, she downloaded decades of research data onto hidden storage devices. Every weakness of every alien species, every biological vulnerability, every medical secret the Coalition had discovered. Her Keth colleague, Zik, looked up from his own work. "Dr. Kim, you are staying late again. You work too much." "Just making sure everything is perfect," Boram replied with her usual cheerful smile. "You know how it is." "Indeed. Your dedication is remarkable. The whole facility benefits from your care. If only you knew," Boram thought. On the other side of Coalition space, engineer Woo Jin Lee was running his daily inspection of the Helios generator. The massive station collected energy from 3 different stars and distributed power to core. Coalition worlds. Billions of aliens depended on the electricity it provided. Woo Jin had been the station's chief human engineer for 15 years. His alien supervisors praised his work constantly. The Morvani station commander, Glub 7, often said that Woo Jin was the most reliable engineer who had ever worked at Helios, which made what he was about to do even more devastating. Message from Earth arrived while Woo Jin was checking power flow to the Vrixani homeworld. He read it twice, then deleted it from his device. But he didn't need to keep it. He had been waiting for this message for 15 years. Woo Jin walked through the station's massive corridors. Other engineers, mostly Keth and Vrixani, worked at control panels and maintenance stations. They nodded respectfully as he passed. The reliable human engineer making his rounds. He stopped at a maintenance panel that controlled backup power systems. To anyone watching, he was running standard diagnostics. In reality, he was installing software that would give him control over the entire station when the time was right. At the next panel, he made similar changes. And the next. Each modification was small and invisible, but together they would allow him to turn the galaxy's most important power station into something very different. "Engineer Lee," called Supervisor Blub 3, sliding over on his wet trail. "How are the power fluctuations in Sector 7? "All fixed," Woo Jin replied. "Just a calibration error. Nothing to worry about." "Excellent. Your work keeps us all safe." Woo Jin smiled politely. Safe was the last thing they were going to be. All across Coalition space, similar scenes played out. Humans who had seemed like model citizens for decades suddenly began implementing plans they had been preparing for years. Dr. Sunmi Choi, a linguistics professor on New Harmony, started inserting subtle errors into the Coalition's translation software. Soon, different species would begin misunderstanding each other in dangerous ways. Captain Soonja Kang, commanding what appeared to be a cargo hauler, began broadcasting coded signals to other merchant ships. Within hours, a secret fleet was coordinating movements throughout Coalition space. Technician Kyung-ho Yu, working in the Coalition's central communication hub, started preparing to turn the galaxy's own information networks against them. Messages would be delayed, rerouted, or lost entirely. None of them looked dangerous. They were just humans doing their jobs, but their real job had always been something else entirely. Back on Soul's Pride, Captain Hyejin Cho watched her crew transform their ship. Hidden panels opened to reveal military-grade weapons, false bulkheads, moved aside to show additional engine systems. The ship's registration beacon began broadcasting new identification codes. "Captain," reported Engineer Min-ho, All systems are online. We're reading 47 other ships in this sector have acknowledged the activation signal. 47, Hyojin repeated. And we're just one sector. Orders, Captain? Asked pilot Sujin. Hyojin looked out the viewport at Kepler Station. Thousands of aliens went about their daily business, completely unaware that everything was about to change. Set course for the rendezvous point, she ordered, and send a message to all units. What should it say? Hyojin thought about Ambassador Park, probably sitting in a detention cell by now. She thought about 50 years of humans being peaceful and cooperative. She thought about the Coalition's vote to treat humans like they were only good for dangerous work. Tell them the Deathworlders are awake, she said. Time to remind the galaxy what that means. Soul's Pride undocked from Kepler Station, just like any other merchant ship leaving port. The station's traffic control wished them safe travels. They had no idea they had just said goodbye to the galaxy they knew. General Dong-Hyun Yoon stood in the war room deep beneath Seoul. The massive chamber had been carved out of solid rock 50 meters underground. Holographic displays filled the curved walls, showing star maps, fleet positions, and communication networks across the galaxy. For 50 years, this room had been Earth's most carefully kept secret. The Coalition believed humans had given up war when they joined galactic civilization. They thought Earth's military was just a small defensive force, barely worth noticing. They had no idea what humans had really been building. General, called Lieutenant Jin-A Park from her control station. We're receiving activation confirmations from all sectors. Operation Tiger's Claw is fully operational. Dong-Hyun nodded. Around him, dozens of officers worked at control panels. Every one of them had been born after humans joined the Coalition, but they had all been raised knowing this day might come. Show me the Coalition response, he ordered. The main display changed to show Coalition fleet movements. Their ships were moving toward human colonies, expecting to find defenseless civilian settlements. What they would actually find was very different. First contact in the Kepler system in 3 hours, reported Commander Mi-Jung Lee. Coalition Third Fleet is approaching New Seoul Colony. And our forces. Captain Kang's battle group is in position. Hidden formation. Running silent. Dong-Hyun smiled grimly. The Coalition was about to learn the difference between human technology they had been allowed to see and the technology humans actually possessed. In the Kepler system, Coalition Admiral Thexvar commanded 12 ships approaching the human colony of New Seoul. The Vrexani commander expected this to be a simple operation. Land troops, escort human civilians to transport ships, relocate them to frontier worlds. Standard procedure. His sensor operator, a nervous Keth named Chick-Chick-9, looked up from his instruments. Admiral, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the colony. What kind of readings? Energy signatures that don't match our databases, and I think there are ships here, but I can't get a clear scan. Thexavar moved his 4 arms impatiently. Sensor ghosts. These outer systems always have interference. Continue approach. The Coalition fleet moved closer to New Seoul. The colony looked peaceful enough. Agricultural domes scattered across the planet's surface. Orbital stations for processing crops and minerals. Everything exactly as their records indicated. Then the human ships appeared. They didn't decloak like normal stealth vessels. Instead, they seemed to step out of space itself. One moment empty vacuum, the next moment filled with ships that looked nothing like the human vessels in Coalition records. Admiral! Chick-Chick-9's voice rose to a shriek. Multiple contacts! Unknown configuration. They're everywhere. Admiral Thexvar stared at his displays in shock. The human ships weren't just advanced. They were operating on principles his people didn't understand. They moved through space in ways that seemed to ignore basic physics. "Open communications," he ordered. A human face appeared on his screen. A woman with short black hair and calm eyes. "This is Captain Sunja Kong of the Earth Defense Force. You are entering sovereign human territory. Reverse course immediately." "Captain Kang, I am Admiral Thexvar of the Coalition Third Fleet. We are here under direct orders from the Galactic Assembly to relocate human civilians. You will stand down and allow us to proceed." "I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Admiral." "Captain, you are outnumbered 12 to 1. Your vessels, while unfamiliar, cannot possibly match the firepower of a coalition fleet." Captain Kong smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "Admiral, would you like a demonstration of Deathworld engineering?" Before Thexvar could respond, space around his fleet began to change. Back in Seoul's war room, General Dong-hyun watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Captain Kang's ships weren't just fighting the coalition fleet, they were transforming the battlefield itself. "Show the coalition what we learned on Earth," he said quietly. The human ships began releasing clouds of what looked like metallic dust. To coalition sensors, it appeared harmless, but within minutes, the dust had formed into complex patterns throughout the combat zone. Gravity fields shifted. Electromagnetic radiation bent in impossible directions. Space itself became hostile. "To coalition technology. General," reported Commander Lee, "coalition ships are reporting system failures. Their weapons can't lock onto our vessels. Their shields are fluctuating. Their engines are fighting gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist." "Perfect. Show them Phase 2. The human ships activated their next systems. Instead of traditional weapons, they began manipulating the fundamental forces around them. The asteroid field near New Seoul started moving in coordinated patterns. Solar radiation was focused and redirected. Even the planet's magnetic field became a weapon." "Admiral." Thexvar watched in horror as his fleet fell apart without a single shot being fired. His ships weren't being destroyed. They were being systematically disabled by an environment that had become hostile to their very existence. "How are they doing this?" he asked his science officer. The Vrexani scientist's forearms were trembling as he worked his instruments. "Unknown, Admiral. They appear to be manipulating space-time on a localized level. Their technology operates on principles we have never encountered." Captain Kang's voice came through the communications again. "Admiral, this is what humans learned from living on a world that tried to kill us every day. We didn't just develop weapons, we learned to make the environment itself fight for us." "This is impossible," Thexvar protested. "No species has technology this advanced." "No species has ever needed to develop it," Kang replied. "Most worlds support life. Earth spent 4 billion years trying to end it. That teaches you different lessons." On the display, Thexvar could see his ships being caught in gravitational loops that pulled them in circles. Their weapons fired harmlessly into space that bent their shots away from human targets. Their shields collapsed as electromagnetic fields turned their own energy against them. "We surrender," Thexvar finally announced. "Surrender not accepted," Kang replied. "You came here to relocate us. Instead, we're going to relocate you." The human ships began herding the coalition fleet away from New Seoul, not destroying them, guiding them through carefully manipulated gravitational fields toward the edge of the system. You will return to Coalition space, Kang continued, and you will deliver a message. Tell them that Deathworlders don't just survive hostile environments. We learn to create them. General Dong Hyun watched the tactical display as similar scenes played out across human space. Coalition fleets expecting easy victories instead found themselves facing technology they couldn't understand, deployed by people they had completely misjudged. Status report, he ordered. Coalition 7th Fleet disabled in the Alpha Centauri system, reported Lieutenant Park. Coalition 2nd Fleet trapped in gravitational anomalies near New Tokyo. Coalition 5th Fleet experiencing total system failures near New Busan. Casualties? Minimal on both sides. Our forces are following Deathworld doctrine. Disable, don't destroy. Dong Hyun nodded approvingly. Humans had learned from Earth that killing everything wasn't survival. Controlling everything was survival. Open. A channel to Coalition High Command, he ordered. The communication took several minutes to establish. When it finally connected, High Arbiter Clethis appeared on the main screen. The old Vrexani looked shaken and confused. General Yoon, Clethis began. What is the meaning of this attack on Coalition forces? Not an attack, High Arbiter. A demonstration. A demonstration of what? Of what Deathworlders really are. Dong Hyun's voice was calm and professional. You seem to have forgotten that we earned that title. We didn't earn it by being peaceful. We earned it by being the only species that survived, on a world that spent billions of years perfecting ways to kill everything that lived on it. Your technology, how is this possible? 50 years ago, when humans joined the Coalition, we made a choice. We chose to be civilized. We chose to be peaceful. We chose to work with other species instead of against them. Dong Hyun paused. Today you took that choice away from us. Clethis's forearms moved nervously. The relocation program is for the greater good of the Coalition. No, Dong Hyun replied. The relocation program is what happens when other species forget why they were afraid of humans in the first place. But don't worry. We're about to remind you. The communication ended. Around the war room, officers continued monitoring human operations throughout the galaxy. Ships that had pretended to be merchant vessels for decades revealed their true capabilities. Colonies that had seemed defenseless activated hidden defensive systems. Humans who had appeared to be ordinary civilians began demonstrating skills their alien neighbors had never suspected. General, asked Commander Lee, what are our next objectives? Dong Hyun looked at the galaxy-wide tactical display. Coalition forces were in chaos, their fleets disabled or retreating. But this was just the beginning. Phase 1 is complete, he announced. We've reminded them that we're Deathworlders. Now, we remind them what that means. He turned to address the entire war room. 50 years ago, we chose to... The crisis began on Verdania Prime 3 days after the first Coalition fleets retreated from human space. The planet's atmospheric processors, which had maintained breathable air for 3 billion Verdanians for over a century, began showing error messages. Chief Engineer Glor 12 slithered through the massive facility's control room, his slug-like body leaving a wet trail on the metal floor. Around him, Verdanian technicians worked frantically at control panels, their tentacles dancing over instruments that were reporting impossible readings. Status report, Glor 12 demanded. The processors are running, but the air mixture is slowly changing, replied his assistant Mormor 6. Oxygen levels are dropping by 0.01% per hour. Carbon dioxide is rising. That's impossible. The safety systems would prevent any dangerous changes. The safety systems report that everything is normal, Glor 12 moved to the central control station. The massive holographic display showed the planet's atmospheric management system. Everything appeared green, all systems operating perfectly, but the actual atmospheric readings told a different story. "Call the human technical advisor," he ordered. Dr. Ji-Hai Chang had been working on Verdania Prime for 8 years. The Verdanians had hired her because humans had experience with atmospheric management from Earth's early terraforming projects. She was known throughout the facility as helpful, hardworking, and completely reliable. She arrived at the control room, within minutes, looking concerned and professional. "Dr. Chang," Glor 12 said, "we have a problem. The atmospheric composition is changing, but our systems show everything is normal." Ji-Hai examined the displays carefully. "This is very strange. Let me check the diagnostic protocols." She moved to a maintenance terminal and began typing commands. To the Verdanians, she looked like she was running standard troubleshooting procedures. In reality, she was checking the progress of programs she had installed years ago, programs that were now slowly poisoning an entire world's atmosphere. "Think I found something," she announced. "There appears to be a cascade failure in the monitoring systems. The processors are working fine, but they're not getting accurate readings about what they're actually producing. Can you fix it?" "I'll need to do a complete system rebuild. It could take weeks, and during that time, the atmospheric changes will continue." Glor 12's tentacles writhed with anxiety. "How long before the atmosphere becomes dangerous?" Ji-Hai pretended to calculate. "At current rates, maybe 2 months before breathing becomes difficult. 4 months before it becomes lethal. We need to evacuate the planet." "Where would 3 billion Verdanians go?" Ji-Hai asked innocently. "Most other worlds can't support your atmospheric needs." Across the galaxy, similar problems were developing on other coalition worlds. On Keth Prime, the specialized environment systems that maintained the planet's precise temperature and humidity began malfunctioning. The Keth, who required exact environmental conditions to survive, watched in panic as their world slowly became uninhabitable. Human environmental engineer Sung-Ho Park, who had maintained their systems for a decade, worked tirelessly to find solutions. But every fix seemed to create new problems. Every repair seemed to make things worse. "I don't understand it," he told the Keth Planetary Council. "These systems were perfectly stable yesterday. It's like someone who understood them completely designed these failures, specifically to be unfixable." On Morvani Central, the water filtration systems that kept the ocean world's environment suitable for its slug-like inhabitants began producing water with dangerous mineral concentrations. The Morvani, who absorbed nutrients directly through their skin, started getting sick within hours. Dr. Kyung-Min Lee, the human biochemist who had helped design the current filtration systems, worked around the clock trying to identify the problem. She ran test after test, looking increasingly frustrated. "The strange thing is," she told the Morvani leadership, "the contamination appears to be precisely engineered to affect your species' biology, almost like someone studied your physiology for years and then designed the perfect poison." But the most devastating problems were happening in coalition communication networks. Intelligence officer Sun Mi Choi sat in her office at the Coalition Communication Hub on Central Station. For 12 years, she had been analyzing communication patterns and helping optimize the galaxy's information networks. Her work had made interstellar communication faster and more reliable than ever before. Now she was using that same expertise to tear it all down. Her fingers moved quickly over her workstation, implementing programs she had been preparing for. years. To anyone watching, she appeared to be doing routine maintenance on the communication arrays. In reality, she was systematically destroying the Coalition's ability to coordinate their response to the human rebellion. Orders from Coalition High Command were being delayed by hours or days. Military communications were being rerouted through systems that introduced subtle errors. Intelligence reports were being modified in ways that made them confusing or contradictory. The Coalition leadership thought they were dealing with isolated technical problems. They had no idea they were facing coordinated sabotage by people who understood their systems better than they did. High Arbiter Clethis stood in the Coalition Emergency Command Center, his 4 arms gesturing angrily at the holographic displays. Around him, every screen showed different crises developing throughout Coalition space. "How can all these systems be failing at once?" he demanded. "Unknown, High Arbiter," replied his technical advisor, a Keth named Zik-Zik-5. "The failures appear random, but the timing suggests coordination. Coordination by whom? That's unclear." On the main display, reports continued flowing in. The hegemony of Chlor was reporting that their energy production systems were producing power that was somehow toxic to Chlorian physiology. The Eternal Assembly of Vash had discovered that their food production facilities were creating crops that looked normal, but lacked essential nutrients for their species. Most disturbing of all, Coalition medical facilities throughout the galaxy were reporting equipment failures and diagnostic errors. Diseases that had been eradicated were reappearing. Medical databases were providing incorrect treatment information. Hospitals were finding that their equipment was producing results that didn't match reality. "Sir," called Communications Officer Blub Blub 8, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through." The display changed to show a human woman with gray hair and calm eyes. Her uniform identified her as President of Earth, though Clethis had never heard of her before. "I am President Da-Yun Lim," she announced. "I believe you wanted to speak with human leadership." "President Lim," Clethis began, "these attacks on Coalition infrastructure must stop immediately." "Attacks?" President Lim looked surprised. "High Arbiter, we haven't attacked anyone. We've simply stopped maintaining your systems." "What do you mean?" "For 50 years, humans have been working throughout Coalition space. We've been your engineers, your technicians, your medical researchers, your communication specialists. We've been maintaining the systems that keep your worlds livable and your civilization running." Clethis felt a cold realization growing in his mind. "You're saying humans have been sabotaging our systems?" "Not sabotaging," President Lim corrected. "We've been maintaining them, fixing problems you never knew existed, preventing failures you never imagined were possible. Making systems work better than they were designed to work. That's impossible. High Arbiter, Earth is a world that spent billions of years trying to kill everything that lived on it. Humans learned to survive by understanding systems completely. Biological systems, environmental systems, technological systems. When we joined the Coalition, we brought that expertise to your worlds." President Lim paused, letting the implications sink in. "Every human engineer in your space has been preventing disasters you didn't know were brewing. Every human doctor has been treating conditions your medical systems couldn't detect. Every human technician has been fixing problems your own people couldn't see." "And now?" Clethis asked, though he already knew the answer. "Now we've stopped. Your systems are running exactly as they were designed to run, maintained only by your own people's understanding of them." President Lim smiled coldly. "How's that working out for you?" Clethis looked around the command center at the displays showing crises throughout Coalition space. Systems failing, worlds becoming uninhabitable, communication networks breaking, down, medical facilities producing dangerous results. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "We want you to understand something very important," President Lim replied. "When you decided to relocate us to frontier worlds, you assumed we were only good for surviving in dangerous places. But you forgot something crucial. Which is? We didn't just learn to survive on a death world. We learned to make any world survivable." Her expression hardened. "And if we can make any world survivable for us, we can make any world unsurvivable for you." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Clethis realized the full scope of his mistake. The Coalition hadn't been living alongside humans for 50 years. They had been completely dependent on human expertise without ever realizing it. Admiral Kyung-suk Bae stood on the bridge of the Earth warship Incheon's Fury, watching the most important battle of the war unfold. But it wasn't a battle in any way the Coalition understood warfare. The Coalition's strongest military force, the Nexus Defense Fleet, had positioned itself near the Proxima Gate, the galaxy's most critical hyperspace junction. Every major trade route and military supply line passed through this single point in space. Control the gate, control the galaxy. Admiral Thexavar, now commanding the combined Coalition forces, had chosen this position carefully. His fleet of 200 warships blocked all approaches to the gate. No human force could possibly break. Through such a massive defensive position, he was about to learn that humans didn't break through defenses. They made defenses irrelevant. "Admiral Bae," reported Captain Young-Ho Nam from his sensor station, "Coalition fleet is maintaining defensive formation around the gate. They have us outnumbered 15-1. "Excellent," Admiral Bae replied calmly. "Begin Phase 1 deployment." The human fleet, only 12 ships, began moving toward the Coalition position. To enemy sensors, they looked impossibly small and insignificant compared to the massive force arrayed against them. "Sir," Admiral Thexavar's tactical officer reported, "human vessels are approaching. Shall we engage?" "Not yet," Thexavar replied. "Let them come closer. I want to capture as many intact as possible." The human ships continued their approach, making no aggressive moves. They weren't even powering up weapon systems. To the Coalition commanders, they looked like they were surrendering. Then space itself began to change. "Admiral!" The Coalition. Sensor operator's voice rose to a panic. "I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the combat zone." Admiral Bae smiled as she watched her ships deploy the technology that had taken 50 years to develop. Humans hadn't just learned to survive on a world with unstable gravity, violent magnetic fields, and constantly shifting environmental conditions. They had learned to recreate those conditions anywhere they chose. The first effect was gravity distortion. The human ships began generating gravitational fields that pulled and twisted space around the Coalition fleet. Ships that tried to maintain formation found themselves being dragged in different directions by forces that shouldn't exist. "Engines at full power," Thexavar ordered. "Maintain position." But the Coalition ships weren't just fighting human weapons. They were fighting physics itself. Their engines, designed to work in normal space, couldn't compensate for gravitational fields that changed direction and intensity every few seconds. The second effect was time dilation. Different areas around the Proxima Gate began experiencing time at different rates. Coalition ships found their communications becoming impossibly delayed as signals traveled between areas where time moved at different speeds. "Admiral," reported the Coalition communication officer. "I'm receiving orders from command, but they're arriving out of sequence. Some messages are coming from the future and some from the past." "That's impossible," Thexvar protested. Captain Mina Song, commanding the human ship Busan's Hammer, opened a communication channel. "Admiral Thexvar, you're correct. What we're doing should be impossible. But that's the thing about surviving. On a death world, you learn that impossible just means nobody's tried it the right way yet." The third effect was electromagnetic manipulation. The human ships began generating fields that turned the Coalition's own energy systems against them. Weapon capacitors discharged into their own hulls. Shield generators created barriers that blocked the ship's own sensors. Communication arrays began broadcasting static instead of coherent signals. "How are they doing this?" Thexvar demanded. His science officer, a trembling Vrexani named Klexvar, worked frantically at his instruments. "Admiral, they appear to be manipulating the fundamental forces of physics on a localized scale. Their technology can create pockets of altered space-time within normal space." "You mean they're changing the laws of physics?" "Not changing them. Applying them differently, like taking the extreme conditions that exist near black holes or neutron stars and creating those conditions here." Admiral Bay watched with satisfaction as the Coalition fleet became increasingly confused and disorganized. Ships that had been in perfect formation were now scattered across a volume of space where normal navigation was impossible. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. The human ships activated their next systems. Instead of creating random chaos, they began imposing order, but order according to human rules, not the natural laws of space. Suddenly, the area around the Proxima Gate became a maze. Gravitational corridors formed paths that human ships could navigate, but Coalition vessels could not. The gate itself remained functional, but only for ships that understood the new physics the humans had imposed on the region. "This is insane," Thexvar muttered as he watched his fleet become completely trapped in a zone where space itself had become hostile to non-human technology. Captain Song's voice came through the communication again. "Admiral, this is what Earth taught us. Our planet didn't just have bad weather or dangerous animals. It had fundamental environmental instability, gravity fluctuations from our unusually large moon, magnetic field reversals that happened regularly, atmospheric composition that changed dramatically over time. So we learned to not just survive in unstable environments. We learned to create stable environments within unstable ones. And now we're creating unstable environments within your stable ones." The Coalition ships found themselves increasingly unable to function. Their weapons couldn't target human vessels through the gravitational distortions. Their engines couldn't maintain course through the time dilation effects. Their shields couldn't protect them from electromagnetic fields that turned their own energy against them. But the humans weren't destroying the Coalition fleet. They were doing something much more sophisticated. They were hurting them. "Admiral Bay," reported Captain Nam, "Coalition vessels are responding to gravitational pressure as predicted. They're being guided into Containment Zone 7. Perfect. Begin Phase 3. The human ships created what could only be described as a prison made of physics. The Coalition fleet found itself trapped in a region of space where their ships could maintain life support and basic functions, but could not leave, could not fight, and could not communicate with the outside galaxy." "Admiral Thexvar," Admiral Bay announced over an open channel, "your fleet is now contained within what we call a Deathworld pocket, a region where space operates according to the rules our ancestors learned to survive under. "You can't keep us here forever," Thexvar replied. "We don't need to keep you here forever. We just need to keep you here long enough." "Long enough for what?" Admiral Bay smiled. "Long enough for the rest of the galaxy to understand their new situation." She activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Bay. The Proxima Gate is now under human control. Begin implementing Protocol 7. Throughout the galaxy, human agents who had been waiting for this moment began their final operations. With the Coalition's primary fleet neutralized and their communication networks compromised, there was nothing to stop the complete transformation of galactic civilization. On Coalition worlds, human engineers began openly taking control of the systems they had been secretly maintaining. Governors who tried to resist found their life support systems developing mysterious problems. Military commanders who attempted to organize resistance discovered that their equipment only worked when human technicians allowed it to work. In space, human ships dropped all pretense of being merchant vessels. The true Earth fleet, hidden for 50 years in the dark spaces between stars, began moving openly through hyperspace lanes. Coalition patrol ships that tried to challenge them found themselves trapped in the same physics-defying fields that had neutralized the Nexus Defense Fleet. Dr. Haywan Park, who had been serving as a medical researcher on New Geneva, walked into the Coalition governor's office and calmly announced that she was now in charge of the planet's health and safety systems. When the governor protested, she showed him the medical reports revealing that every Coalition citizen on the world had been exposed to treatments that would prove fatal without human intervention. Engineer Tae-Ho Kim, working at the massive industrial complex on Kepler 7, activated his hidden control systems and took direct command of the factories that produced weapons and equipment for a dozen Coalition worlds. Production continued, but now the equipment being manufactured would only function properly for human operators. All across Coalition space, the same pattern repeated. Humans stepped out of the shadows and revealed that they had been in control of everything that mattered all along. Back at the Proxima Gate, Admiral Thexvar watched helplessly as human ships began passing through the hyperspace junction without restriction while Coalition vessels remained trapped in their physics prison. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked Admiral Bay. "Since the day we joined the Coalition," she replied honestly. "We hoped it would never be necessary. We genuinely wanted to be part of a peaceful galactic community." "Then why—" High Arbiter Clethis stood in his private chambers aboard Nexus Station, looking out at the stars through the massive viewport. Just 1 week ago, he had been the most powerful being in the galaxy, leader of a coalition that governed thousands of worlds and trillions of citizens. Now he was essentially a prisoner in his own headquarters. The station's life support systems still worked, but only because human engineers allowed them to work. The communication networks functioned, but every message was monitored and filtered by human intelligence officers. The defensive systems remained operational, but they now took orders from human commanders. A soft chime announced someone at his door. Clethis turned to see Agent Jae-Won Yu entering his chambers. For 15 years, Yu had served as his trusted human advisor, always helpful, always reliable, always loyal. That had all been a lie. "Good evening, High Arbiter," Yu said politely, carrying a datapad and wearing the same respectful expression he had maintained for over a decade. "Agent Yu," Clethis replied bitterly. "Or should I say, Intelligence Director Yu?" "I prefer just Yu," the human said, settling into a chair across from Clethis. "Titles were never important to me." How long? Clethis asked. How long have you been deceiving me? Since the day I arrived, you answered honestly. I was assigned to monitor coalition leadership and influence major policy decisions. For 15 years, my job was to make sure the coalition remained stable and peaceful. Your job was to spy on us. My job was to prevent exactly what happened last week. You leaned forward. High Arbiter, do you understand what you did when you passed that relocation resolution? Clethis's forearms moved in agitation. We tried to maintain proper species roles within the coalition structure. You tried to put humans back in their place. You corrected. After 50 years of peaceful cooperation, you decided we had become too comfortable, too influential, too dangerous to leave in positions of authority. It was for the stability of the coalition. It was fear. Yu's voice remained calm and professional. Fear that humans were becoming too successful, too integrated, too important to the systems that keep your civilizations running. Clethis moved to his desk and activated a holographic display. It showed reports from across coalition space, worlds where life support was failing, communication networks breaking down, industrial systems producing dangerous results. And this is your response? He demanded. Mass sabotage, the potential deaths of billions? No deaths, Yu replied firmly. Check your casualty reports. Clethis examined the data more carefully. Despite the massive system failures across dozens of worlds, the death toll was surprisingly low. Injuries were minimal. Even on worlds where atmospheric systems were failing, evacuation procedures were working smoothly. I don't understand. High Arbiter, humans aren't trying to kill anyone. We're demonstrating what happens when human expertise is removed from coalition systems. You stood and walked to the viewport. For 50 years, humans have been maintaining, improving, and protecting the infrastructure of your civilizations. Impossible. Our own engineers designed and built those systems. Your engineers designed them. Our engineers made them work properly. You turned back to face Clethis. Do you know why human colonies were so successful? Why human workers were so valued? Why human researchers made so many breakthrough discoveries? Natural aptitude? Because we come from a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything that lived on it. We learned to see problems that other species can't detect, prevent failures that other minds can't imagine, and fix systems in ways that other engineers never consider. Yu activated his own datapad, showing technical specifications that Clethis had never seen before. The atmospheric processor on Verdania Prime was designed with a fatal flaw. Under certain conditions, it would slowly poison the entire planet. Your engineers never noticed because those conditions hadn't occurred yet. Our engineer fixed the flaw on her third day of work, 8 years ago. Now we've unfixed it. Clethis stared at the technical readouts. The flaw was subtle, hidden deep in the system's operating protocols. He could see how coalition engineers would miss it, and how a human engineer from a world with unstable environments would spot it immediately. The Keth environmental systems on their homeworld have 17 different failure modes that could render the planet uninhabitable within hours. Your people designed safeguards for 5 of them. We've been preventing the other 12 from triggering for decades. More technical data flowed across the display. System after system, world after world, all of them dependent on human knowledge that the Coalition had never realized they were receiving. The Morvani water filtration systems, the Vrexani power distribution networks, the Chlorian industrial facilities. Every major piece of infrastructure in Coalition space has been improved, maintained, and protected by human engineers who saw problems that your own people couldn't detect. But why? Clethis asked. If you could see these flaws, why didn't you tell us about them? We tried, you replied. In the early years, human engineers would write detailed reports about system vulnerabilities and recommended improvements. The reports were ignored, dismissed as unnecessary complications, or filed away and forgotten. That can't be true. Check your archives. Every human technical advisor, every human research scientist, every human maintenance worker filed comprehensive reports about problems in Coalition systems. The reports exist, High Arbiter. They were just never taken seriously because humans were considered primitive deathworlders who couldn't possibly understand advanced alien technology better than the species who built it. Clethis accessed the station's historical archives. Report after report from human workers dating back decades. Warnings about system failures, recommendations for improvements, detailed technical analyses that would have prevented most of the current crisis, all ignored. So we stopped writing reports. You continued. Instead, we just fixed the problems ourselves. Quietly, efficiently, without bothering anyone with complicated explanations about deathworld engineering principles that Coalition species weren't interested in learning. And now? Now you've told us to leave. So we're leaving. And taking our expertise with us? You sat back down. High Arbiter, what you're seeing now isn't human sabotage. It's what Coalition systems look like when they're maintained only by Coalition engineers. Clethis reviewed more reports. Failure after failure, each one corresponding to problems that human workers had been quietly solving for years. Systems that looked stable on the surface but were actually being held together by constant human intervention. The scale of this is complete. You finished. High Arbiter, there isn't a single major system in Coalition space that doesn't depend on human knowledge to function properly. Not one. How is that possible? Because your worlds are safe, you explained. Coalition species evolved on stable planets with predictable environments. You never had to develop the paranoid comprehensive system analysis that comes from living on a world where any component failure can lead to mass extinction. You activated another display showing Earth's geological history. Ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, magnetic field reversals, atmospheric composition changes. Humans evolved to assume that everything will eventually break, in the worst possible way at the worst possible time. So we learned to see every potential failure mode, prepare for every possible disaster, and build redundancy into every system we touch. And the Coalition never realized that you were completely dependent on us. Yes. Yu's expression remained professional, but there was something cold in his eyes. 50 years of humans quietly keeping your civilization running while you treated us like useful barbarians who were good for dangerous work but not sophisticated enough for important positions. Clethis felt the full weight of the Coalition's mistake settling on him. They hadn't just misjudged human capabilities. They had built their entire civilization on the foundation of human expertise without ever realizing it. What happens now? He asked. That depends on you, you replied. We can continue this demonstration until every Coalition world realizes how dependent they are on human knowledge, or we can negotiate a new arrangement. What kind of arrangement? The kind where humans are treated as equal partners instead of useful primitives. The kind where human expertise is acknowledged and valued instead of taken for granted. The kind where the species that has been keeping your civilization running gets a say in how that civilization operates. Clethis looked out at the stars again. Each point of light represented worlds where Coalition citizens were learning the same lesson he was learning, that the humans they had dismissed as crude deathworlders were actually the reason their advanced civilization worked at all. And if we refuse, you stood to leave. High Arbiter, we've been keeping your worlds livable for 50 years. We know exactly what makes them uninhabitable. He paused at the door. The choice is yours, partners or primitives. But you can't have primitives who run your civilization for you anymore. We're done pretending to be something we're not. After you left, Clethis remained at the viewport for hours, watching human. President Daun Lim stood at the podium in Seoul's Global Assembly Hall, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. Behind her, massive screens showed the faces of humans throughout the galaxy. Colonists, workers, scientists, and soldiers, all waiting to hear how their world would address the crisis they had created. But this speech wasn't just for humans. Throughout Coalition space, on every world where humans lived or worked, the broadcast was being transmitted through communication networks that human intelligence officers now controlled. Whether Coalition leaders wanted their citizens to hear this message or not, they were going to hear it. Citizens of Earth and humans throughout the galaxy, President Lim began. 3 weeks ago, the Galactic Coalition voted to relocate all human populations to frontier worlds, stripping us of positions and roles we have held for 50 years. She paused, letting the words sink into audiences both human and alien. The Coalition leaders believed they were putting us in our proper place, as primitive deathworlders suitable only for dangerous work in hostile environments. Today, I want to explain to the galaxy exactly what that classification means. The screens behind her changed to show Earth from space. The blue and white planet looked peaceful and beautiful, exactly as Coalition surveys had recorded it decades ago. Earth appears to be a garden world. Abundant water, breathable atmosphere, moderate temperatures, rich ecosystems. Coalition xenobiologists classified our planet as unusually supportive of life. The image shifted to show Earth's geological history: massive volcanic eruptions, continent-sized ice sheets, asteroid impacts that carved out craters visible from space. What they didn't understand is that Earth has been trying to kill everything that lives on it for over 4 billion years. Our planet has experienced at least 5 mass extinction events. Our magnetic field reverses regularly, exposing the surface to deadly radiation. Our tectonic plates move constantly, creating earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Our climate shifts between ice ages and greenhouse periods with alarming frequency. President Lim walked across the stage as images of human history played on the screens. Primitive humans surviving ice ages, building civilizations despite natural disasters, adapting to environments that changed faster than most evolution could follow. Humans didn't just survive on a death world. We learned to thrive on a planet that specializes in making survival impossible. We developed technology to control unstable environments. We learned to predict and prevent natural disasters. We mastered the art of making dangerous places safe to live in. The images changed to show human colonies throughout Coalition space. Peaceful agricultural worlds, efficient industrial complexes, advanced research facilities. When humans joined the Coalition, we brought those skills with us. For 50 years, we have been quietly applying Deathworld survival techniques to maintain and improve the infrastructure of galactic civilization. Now the screens showed technical diagrams and system analyses. the hidden flaws in coalition systems that human engineers had been fixing for decades. We saw the vulnerabilities in your atmospheric processors that could poison entire worlds. We detected the failure modes in your power systems that could leave billions in darkness. We identified the weaknesses in your life support networks that could kill whole populations. President Lim's voice remained calm and professional, but there was steel underneath. And we fixed them for 50 years, without recognition, without acknowledgement, without even being asked. We have been preventing disasters that would have devastated coalition worlds. The broadcast feed switched to show coalition worlds where the current crisis was unfolding. But instead of chaos and destruction, the images showed orderly evacuations, functioning emergency systems, and casualties that remained remarkably low despite massive infrastructure failures. Even now, as we demonstrate the consequences of removing human expertise from coalition systems, we are ensuring that these demonstrations don't actually hurt anyone. Because that's what Deathworlders do. We prevent disasters, not cause them. She walked back to the podium, her expression hardening. But the coalition decided that 50 years of peaceful cooperation was enough. They decided that humans had become too comfortable, too influential, too successful in roles beyond simple survival, work. The screens now showed the voting record from the Coalition Assembly, with species after species supporting the Human Relocation Resolution. So we are giving the Coalition exactly what they asked for. We are showing them what it means when Deathworlders stop playing nice. President Lim activated a control device. Throughout Coalition space, human operations that had been limited to defensive demonstrations suddenly expanded in scope and scale. On Verdania Prime, the atmospheric crisis that had been developing slowly over weeks suddenly accelerated. But instead of becoming lethal, the atmosphere began changing in ways that made the planet suitable for human habitation, while making it increasingly uncomfortable for Verdanians. On Keth Prime, the environmental systems didn't just malfunction. They began terraforming the world to match Earth's atmospheric composition and temperature ranges. On Morvani Central, the water filtration systems started producing water that was perfectly safe for humans, but contained mineral concentrations that made the slug-like Morvani sluggish and confused. "This is what a death world teaches you," President Lim announced. "If you can learn to make one type of environment livable, you can learn to make any environment deadly for anyone who threatens you." The broadcast feed showed space battles where human ships weren't just defeating coalition forces, they were transforming entire regions of space into environments where only human technology could function. Our ancestors survived on a world where the environment itself was the enemy. We learned to turn hostile environments into weapons. We learned to make dangerous places safe for us and deadly for our enemies. President Lim's voice rose slightly, carrying to audiences throughout the galaxy. "The Coalition wanted to remind us that we are Deathworlders. Thank you for the reminder." The screens behind her now showed the true scope of human operations. Not just the defensive actions of the past weeks, but the complete network of human influence that had been hidden throughout Coalition space for decades. Weather control satellites above agricultural worlds began redirecting storms and climate patterns according to human preferences rather than coalition needs. Industrial facilities on mining worlds started producing materials to human specifications while reducing output for coalition requirements. Research stations began sharing their data with Earth while restricting access to coalition scientists. 4. 50 years, humans have chosen to be civilized, President Lim continued. We chose cooperation over conquest. We chose integration over domination. We chose to build together rather than destroy what others had built. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Today, the coalition took that choice away from us. The images changed to show human colonies that had seemed defenseless, revealing hidden defensive systems. Mining operations that had appeared to be simple extraction facilities demonstrated that they were actually massive military construction projects. Research stations that had looked like peaceful scientific outposts began broadcasting signals that reached every human agent throughout the galaxy. What you are seeing now is what happens when a species that survived 4 billion years of planetary attempts at genocide decides to stop pretending to be harmless. Throughout Coalition space, the demonstrations reached their peak, not destruction, but transformation. Human engineers weren't breaking Coalition systems. They were converting them to serve human purposes. Life support systems that had maintained alien-friendly environments for decades suddenly began producing atmospheric mixtures that favored human physiology. Transportation networks that had carried Coalition goods for generations started routing resources to human settlements while creating delays and shortages for alien populations. Communication systems that had connected Coalition worlds began, carrying human messages with perfect clarity while introducing static and delays into alien transmissions. This is not conquest, President Lim clarified. This is recalibration. The Coalition wanted to recalibrate human roles within their society. We are recalibrating the entire society to recognize human contributions. The screens showed Coalition, leaders on dozens of worlds, all receiving the same message. Their civilizations could continue to function, but only with human cooperation, human expertise, and human permission. The choice now belongs to the Coalition, President Lim announced. You can continue to treat humans as primitive deathworlders, suitable only for dangerous work, in which case you will learn exactly how dangerous we can make your comfortable worlds. She walked closer to the camera, her expression serious, but not threatening. Or you can acknowledge that the species you have been dismissing as crude survivors are actually the reason your advanced civilization functions at all. You can accept humans as equal partners in a galactic community that we have been quietly maintaining for half a century.